My name is Diana. Standing in the middle of the chaos at my sister Stella's MBA graduation party, I'm reminded of how far I've come and the long, standing injustice that led me here. My grandmother, a strong and determined 85-year-old named Beatrice, has just stood up and declared, "I'm pressing charges against you." The room falls into a stunned silence, and I can feel the weight of the truth crashing down on everyone. It all started long before this moment. I grew up in a well-to-do family in a small town. My parents, Henry and Victoria, were successful in their careers. Henry was a corporate executive, and Victoria was a high-end real estate agent. They always seemed to have high expectations, but it was clear from a young age that those expectations were divided unevenly between me and my younger sister, Stella. When I was 13 and Stella was 10, I brought home straight A's on my report card. I was so excited, thinking I'd get some kind of recognition. But my mom just glanced at it while she was doing paperwork and said, "Good job. We knew you could do it." That was it. No celebration, no extra privileges. A few weeks later, Stella got a B in science. My parents took her to a fancy restaurant and spent the whole evening praising her for her effort. I sat there, pushing my food around my plate, wondering what I'd done wrong. As I got older, the pattern became more obvious. Stella struggled with math, so my parents hired a private tutor for her. I had to teach myself. When it came time for college applications, Stella's applications were handled by a professional consultant, while I spent countless hours at the library researching scholarships on my own. On my 16th birthday, instead of getting a car like Stella did 2 years later, I got a lecture from my parents about responsibility and the importance of saving money. "Stella needs more support," my mom explained. "You're so mature for your age. You understand, right?" I did understand, but it hurt. I was 18, just 3 months from high school graduation, when the real blow came. I'd been accepted to a state university with a partial scholarship, but it wasn't enough to cover everything. I was counting on the college fund that my grandparents had set up for me and Stella. My dad had always said, "Your grandpa and grandma want to make sure both you girls can go to college." But when I sat down with my parents to discuss the logistics, everything changed. My mom and dad exchanged a look, the kind that makes your stomach drop. "We need to talk about the fund," my mom said, avoiding my eyes. My dad continued, "Stella's going to need more support. Her grades aren't as strong as yours. She'll need the full amount to have the same opportunities." I was in shock. "But Grandma set it up for both of us," I said. My mom snapped, "It's still family money. We're making the best decision for the family as a whole." My dad interrupted, "You got the scholarship. You're resourceful. Stella needs this more than you do." I stared at them in disbelief. "So, I get nothing?" I asked. My mom replied, "You'll figure it out. You always do." That night, those words echoed in my head. I didn't argue. I just went in my room, closed the door, and started looking into military education benefits. 3 months later, I was at basic training, while Stella was posting pictures on social media from her private university orientation, captioning them, "So blessed to have parents who believe in me." Meanwhile, I was learning to disassemble a rifle in under a minute. Over the next 6 years, I served my country. I worked night shifts to pay off my student loans, and I built a life without my parents' support. They posted about Stella's achievements on social media, but never mentioned me. I sent them updates, like a photo of me completing an obstacle course or a message about making it through a tough training month, but I got back short responses, like "Good job," "Stay safe," or sometimes no response at all. My aunt, Clara, was different. She was my dad's older sister, and she always checked in on me. She once texted, "Your grandmother asks about you constantly. She seems worried, more than usual." When I called my grandma Beatrice, she said some cryptic things. "Your grandfather would be proud of your strength, but strength shouldn't mean struggle. And remember, some things aren't what they seem, including family decisions." I was confused, but I didn't think much of it at the time. 6 years later, I came home. I'd used my military benefits to finish my bachelor's degree online, but I didn't have the college experience that Stella had. At the first family dinner back, it felt like I was a stranger. Stella was talking about her MBA applications to top schools like Harvard and Stanford. When I mentioned that I was looking into project management jobs, my dad just nodded vaguely, and my mom said, "At least you got that military experience out of your system. Now you can settle down." Nobody asked about my deployment or how I was adjusting to civilian life. A few weeks after coming home, I joined a veterans support group. That's where I met Ryan, a 32-year-old who'd served for 10 years. He understood the strange feeling of coming home and the disconnect with civilians. One evening, he asked me why I joined the military. I told him the whole story for the first time. After I finished, he asked, "Did your grandmother actually agree to give all the money to your sister?" I realized I'd never confirmed it with her. I just accepted my parents' version of events. One day, a text came to the family group chat. Stella had been accepted to Northwestern's MBA program. My parents were overjoyed and immediately said they'd help with the tuition. I asked, "Where's that money coming from?" "I'm still paying off my loans." My mom got angry and said, "When will you stop being bitter?" We did what we thought was best. I was hurt, but I didn't argue. Instead, I called my Aunt Clara and got my grandma's number. That evening, I called my grandma. She'd been waiting for this conversation for a long time. She told me that the trust her and my grandfather had set up was supposed to give $200,000 to each of us for educational purposes. "Your father violated the terms of the trust. He forged my signature," she said. She'd already hired an attorney, Mr. Harris, to investigate. That night, I received an email from Mr. Harris with confidential documents. The original trust document clearly stated equal distribution. The withdrawal history showed that all $400,000 had gone to Stella's accounts. And there was a forged amendment to the trust. It was clear that my dad had committed fraud. The next morning, I went to my parents' house with the printed documents. When my dad saw me, his smile faded. I showed him the papers and said, "You forged her signature. You stole my share." He tried to make excuses, but I was done listening. I told him I wanted my $250,000, including another $50,000 from a separate trust that he'd also misappropriated, with interest, and that I wanted them to understand what they'd done. 3 weeks before Stella's graduation party, my parents asked me to come. I called my grandma, and she said, "They want to control the narrative. Go, but not to forgive, to witness." Ryan was worried about me going, but I knew I had to see this through. At the party, it was all about Stella. My dad gave a speech about how they'd sacrificed everything for her future. But then my grandma stood up. She walked to the front of the room and said, "Before we toast, I'd like to say something." She explained how the trust was supposed to work, how my dad had forged her signature, and how he'd embezzled the money. The room was in shock. As the truth came out, more irregularities were revealed. Some of the trust money had been used for personal debts, like credit card payments and home renovations. Stella was devastated. Her offer from the consulting firm was rescinded, and her reputation was damaged. My parents were in ruins. My dad broke down in tears, and my mom was furious. After the party, Mr. Harris laid out the legal situation. My dad pleaded guilty to reduced charges, and a settlement was reached. He had to refinance the house and liquidate part of his retirement account to pay me back. 6 months later, Stella reached out to me. We met at a coffee shop. She apologized and said she was starting to understand how much she'd taken for granted. She even showed me a payment plan to pay me back from her salary. Now, 18 months after that fateful party, I can see things clearly. I've learned that standing up for myself was the right thing to do. My relationship with my dad is slowly improving, but my mom is still angry. Stella and I are starting to build a more honest relationship. And I've used the restitution money to start a mentorship program for veterans, just like I'd planned. I've turned the theft into a legacy, and I'm finally taking control of my future.